Come all young sailormen, listen to me. I'll sing you a song of the fish in the sea. Blow, ye winds, westerly, westerly blow. We're bound to the southward, so steady she goes.
Get started. So we are missing an individual for this next set. Was taken either by weather or Delta Airlines, we're not sure. So we're going to go to the second person. I'm going to introduce Jon Branshaw, everybody. Commercial fished the waters from Oregon to Alaska for 42 years. He's retired from fishing. Now living in Westport, Washington. Drives truck for Ocean Gold Seafood. Feeding America one fish stick at a time. Big welcome for the Dean of Dungy, the gab-toothed crabber, Jon Branshaw.
Boy, that's bright lights there, but I can handle this. Thanks for all coming here this weekend, folks. Us Fisher Poets, all of us, we appreciate it. We appreciate the support. During the pandemic, we went virtual, and I didn't sit on my hands, so I still wanted to perform, so I contacted the organizers of the Durango Cowboy Poets Association. They have a poet fest in Durango, Colorado for cowboys. And when I say organizers, I called my cousin. She's the director of their association. And I said, Linda, I'd really like to come to Durango and perform. She goes, well, Johnny, it's cowboy poetry. We celebrate our Western culture and heritage. And I explained to her, we got a guy named Ron McDaniel that comes to Astoria every year, and he's a cowboy, and everybody seems to enjoy him. I think we should have a cultural exchange. So she relented, and she says, I tell you what, you're not going to be a featured reader, but we'll put you on the open mic, and you can do a couple poems. So I went there, and I did some poetry outside in a courtyard on a Saturday afternoon. It was beautiful. Fall colors, had a decent crowd, and I got a chance to do about 4 or 5 poems, and they seemed to like me. And my cousin came up to me afterwards, and she said, that was pretty good. I tell you what, you can come back next year, but I want you to write a cowboy-inspired poem. So I did. This poem is called Back to Durango. I came back to Durango, and this time, I brought my net. But all I see is mountains and snow. There is no place to set. I spent my life on the ocean, breathing that ocean air. But up here in your mountains, there is no air to spare. So I ran into some cowboys. They were playing cards. Surely, they would show me where to set. They said, sit down, son, relax, and place a bet. I didn't win much that night. I couldn't get a decent hand, but I listened to their stories and I learned about their land. Our lives were a lot alike, we all agreed. Cowboys, they live off the land. Myself, I farm the sea. It's a life that brings us happiness of days well spent. When we lay down at night, we are content. Those cowboys, they're not Yellowstone. Me, I'm not the deadliest catch. What Ron and I, when we're on stage, we're the real thing. That's what you get. I'll probably go back to Durango. I don't think I'll bring my net. This time I'll find those cowboys and play some cards, and maybe this time I'll win that bet. That's Back to Durango. I'm dusting off a couple of poems I wrote years ago, and I had them memorized back then, but memory fails me, so I'm going to have to read these. I commercial fished for 42 years, and I ran my father's boat. I ran some different boats. I crewed on decks. You know something? I crewed with so many deckhands, I forgot the names of half of them. But anyway, this one kid, he made an impression on me. He came down to my crab boat in Westport there, the Carinel. It was a little day boat, a little 36-footer. We had a 300-pot limit. We just fished Grace Harbor area and out in front. And this kid named Willie Beppu showed up on my boat one day, and I hadn't hired a crew. And he asked me for a job, and well, I wrote a poem about it. It's called Willie Was a Greenhorn. Willie was a greenhorn. You know, he pounded the docks. You know, he wore out a pair of extra toughs before he got his first job. You know, he stopped by my boat. And what did I see? It was a greenhorn, greener than green. He was grinning back at me. I said, you look kind of skinny. Can you lift a crab pot? He said, show me what one looks like, Skipper, and I'll give her what I got. You know, called a hunch. Maybe it was just a gut feeling. But I gave Willie a job. I thought I'd try him out for the season. The very first day of fishing, we went out on the flood. He took a buoy stick to the face. He was covered in blood. Well, we patched him up. We kept on fishing. Willie was tough. There was no bitching. You know, Willie worked hard all that year, and he finished the season. I think he's coming back next year for all the right reasons. That's Willie Was a Greenhorn. Now, all my stories are true. I think you know that. I might embellish a few things, but pretty much they all are. But this is kind of an interesting poem I wrote a few years back. It's about the toilet on a boat, which we call a head. It's called Heads Up. You know, I've sat on a throne. I've sat on a 5-gallon pail. Every boat, every head on a boat has a story to tell. You know, a working head, it's a necessary function. With improper handling, you can reach critical junction. You know, clogged pipes, they'll make an overflowing mess, and it'll surely put your stomach to the test. You're using too much toilet paper, I preach to the crew. One square will work. 4 squares, I feel, will surely do. You know, I crewed on the Max. That head had a stuck flapper. Oh, when that boat took a roll, you'd pity the guy on the crapper. You know, we had a name for that head. Yep, we named it after the skipper. We called it Swen's Revenge because of that blowing shitter. Alas, one more story about a crapper was heading south a few years ago when we had that disaster. The kid had done an engine room check, and he woke me from a dead sleep. He says, a pipe has come unloose in the engine room, and the poo, it's beginning to seep. Well, we pushed her in place, and we wired her up. Both of us were about to throw up, but the line was unplugged, and the bowl, it overflowed. So I grabbed the deck hose, and I gave her a blow. It made a mess, but the line was unplugged. South of Vancouver Island, the Alma Jane chugged. Like I said, all my stories are true. And this next one is kind of interesting. It's about an old tender from Cordova, Alaska, and it was called the Salmo Point. And this is the story of its last voyage. It's called The Last Voyage of the Salmo Point. The last voyage of the Salmo Point. Now that is a story to tell. I was one of the last ones to see that boat. I remember it well. She was sitting behind Wingham, swinging on the hook. What was under her hatches that night? I would have liked to take a look. You know, that old boat, she'd packed a lot in her day. Herring, crab, just about every bay. You know, I don't know why that night, but they pulled the hook. I guess they were going to go around the Cape there and take a look. Oh, a terrible gale. It was blowing that night. Waves crashed over their decks. It was a terrible fright. Well, what happens next? Nobody really knows. But the boat, it was sinking quickly, as the story goes. Well, a Mayday was called, and the raft was tossed, and the Salmo, it slid into the seas. A total loss. The crew, they drifted for a while, and then the Coast Guard picked them up. Soon they were on the beach, and they were drinking a hot cup. You know, a few years went by, and the sinking was mostly forgotten. But the Salmo's load was breaking up. Yep, it was floating up from the bottom. Yep, the Salmo's load, it was washing ashore, and nobody really knew about it. Till a guy out deer hunting, he stumbled upon it. Well, he was a law-abiding citizen, so he brought his find to the cops in town. Soon the rumors hit the streets. That was killer weed that he had found. There was only a few days left of the deer hunting season, but the harbor was soon empty. That must have been the reason. You know, not too many bucks were shot those next few days. Most guys just sat in the wheelhouse in a blue smoky haze. But for the next few weeks, the beachcombing was hot. People were stumbling around the beaches and they were looking for that killer pot. Then the feds, they got wind of things and they put the beachcombing to a stop. Yep, they flew the beaches with those Black Hawk helicopters and they scooped up all that pot. Well, the beaches were soon clean and the town, it lived another day. And a guy sat at the end of the bar at the Alaskan and smiled and said to himself, I won't piss this spill away. That's Last Voyage. Okay, let me find this one here. Just give me a second. Oh, there it is. This poem I just wrote a few months ago. And I tried to make fun of it, but it's pretty damn serious. And at the end, I'll give you a little public service announcement and try to tie it all in. It's called, He Escaped in His Underwear and Extra Tufts. It was a dark, stormy night at the Westport Marina. I was at the Harbor Resort with my sweet senorita. And in that warm bed, she lay asleep in my arms. Through the fog of my dream, I heard an alarm. You know, I couldn't get that ringing out of my head, so I jumped up. I rolled out of bed. Once I stood up, it was perfectly clear. I smelled smoke, and I felt fear. Yes, the Harbor Resort was on fire. That old building was done. I grabbed my phone. I dialed 911. I awoke my lady as she dressed in a rush. As the smoke filled the room, we both ran out. Me in my underwear and extra tufts. That's it. What happened while we're sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, the building caught fire. And the beeping of that alarm was the smoke detector. The smoke detector saved my life. Because I hadn't heard that, I wouldn't be up here telling stories tonight. So I beg all of you, when you go home after this weekend and having a good time, check the batteries in your smoke detectors. And if your smoke detectors are expired and need to be replaced, replace them, because it may save your life. Yeah, my girl's over there, and we were bonded through trauma because we'd just started dating a few weeks earlier. And so she lived there, and since her house burnt down, I'm blessed to have her and her dog live with me now. I love you, Trish.
I love you too.
Okay, let's change it up a bit. Anybody ever watch that TV show, Deadliest Catch? Do you like it? Well, it's a bunch of crap, okay? Nope, nobody from the Discovery Channel's here tonight. Anyways, I'm going to tell you a poem called Deadliest Catch. Deadliest Catch, Deadliest Catch. It's a show on your television. Have you saw it yet? No, 1,000,000 square miles. Unpredictable waters. Those Highliner king crabbers, they're making the dollars. And you know, they're getting rich, but it's not just their catch. It's the merchandising, the logos, and all the side deals they fetch. You know, they're all over TV. Cash Cab, The View. You know, Sig was on Martha Stewart last week. He was making his mom's codhead stew. There was Phil, and there's Jonathan, and the rest of the crews. When they're not out fishing, they'll be in Dutch. They'll be toasting Phil with a brew. You know, it's that designer rain gear and those cowboy hats, smoking Marb Reds. That's where Edgar's at. Deadliest Catch. It's a show for all ages, and you can catch it on the Discovery Channel. It'll help pay those guys' wages. That's Deadliest Catch. As Joel said, I crab fished for 42 years. I fished with my father. And but now I work for Ocean Gold Seafoods, and I drive in the summertime, I drive a big flatbed. It holds 10 totes. Each tote weighs 1,500 pounds, and I haul 15,000 pounds of hake across the street over to the cold storage. It's about a 6-block round trip. Make about 20 trips a day, haul about 300,000 pounds a day. Yeah, I'll get to that, honey. And in the wintertime, my job even gets tougher. I drive a semi across the street. It takes them about 4 hours to fill it. And then they call me up, and I work from home now, and they say, Johnny, come down and move your truck. And I go down there, and I hop in the semi, and I drive it across the street and spin it around and back it into the bay because I have a CDL, and I drive a big truck. It's a fun job. Anyway, so I've written some cannery poems is what I'm getting to, and I wrote this one called Cat Food Express I'd like to share with you if you'd like to hear that. Okay, crabber went a-trucking that morning. Oh, the docks, they were a mess. There was totes everywhere, full of unmarketable bycatch. You see, the sea clipper had caught a bunch of pollock, but it was too small to fillet. Marketing, they'd have to be creative to save the cannery's ass that day. So a few phone calls were made, and a deal was soon signed. Purina Pet Foods in Nebraska would buy it, and it'd feed America's felines. So crabber went a-trucking. I think you know the rest. Soon he was driving the Cat Food Express. Yep, he hauled that cat food. He hauled it all day. They put it inside fiber totes into the freezer bay. The truckers, they sit idling at the loading dock. Soon they'll be heading to the heartland, the Midwest. They're waiting for the crabber that went a-trucking. He's driving the Cat Food Express. Got time for one more? Okay, now Joel introduced me as the gap-toothed crabber, and as you might notice, I'm missing a tooth in front of me here. Well, I'm going to tell him that story, okay? Just hush it, okay? Anyways, I have a flipper, but on Wednesday I put my flipper on the coffee table, and when I came home from work it was gone, and Cody was the only one there, so I'm pretty sure he ate it. Okay. Okay, anyway. Maybe I just lost it. I carved up his poop for the next 2 days looking for it, though. I'm telling you the truth. Okay, let's call Gap Tooth Grabber. And just imagine I have a tooth in here, okay, when I start the poem. Those Gap Tooth Grabbers, that's what you always see. I take out my tooth. Well, I'm a Gap Tooth Grabber. What do you think of me? Okay, I put it back in. Well, everybody asked me, so John, how did that happen? Well, let me tell you the story, folks. It happened out crabbing. Oh, it was a beautiful day on the ocean. There was a brisk east wind. My buoys, they were hanging off the beach. So I had to turn my boat in. Oh, the gear was a mess. A big swell had screwed us. But we were doing our best. There was just the two of us. The sun was in my eyes, and I spotted that buoy. I put her in the smoke hole and shouted, "Grab Louie!" Throttled it back, and I grabbed that buoy. Yep, I hauled her aboard with all of my fury. Well, I put her in the block, and then I dropped my stick. You know, that son of a gun had bounced off the rail, and it smacked me in the lip. Now, Van, he usually grabs the stick. I guess he was busy. Oh, my mouth, it was a throb, and I was getting dizzy. But we hauled her aboard, and we baited her up. I thought I'd run inside the galley, you know, for a quick checkup. I looked in the mirror, and what did I see? It was that Gap Tooth Grabber, and he was grinning back at me. Once again, folks, thank you so much for putting up with me and letting me do a couple extra poems tonight. I really enjoy coming here. This is my 20th year at Fisher Poets, and it's amazing how that time is flowing, because it seems like just yesterday when Jon Broderick approached me at open mic, and where I did a couple poems and said, come back next year. So thank you, Jon Broderick, for having me come back. Thank you. Thank you.
Bait scalloping was a livelihood for most of us here. Mackerel clouds overhead are moving on. We call it a sailor sky, and the wind lightens, flattening the water, bringing a fall.